I walked into my house at 3:17 p.m., still holding the envelope that confirmed the end of a 12-year career. I didn't expect balloons or sympathy, just maybe a hug, maybe silence, maybe anything. But what I got, Amanda was standing in the kitchen pouring wine, scrolling her phone. When I told her, she didn't even flinch. "You lost your job," she said, smirking. "So, what now? You gonna mope around here like a little boy?" I blinked. I thought she was joking, but then she laughed. Not the kind of laugh you share in disbelief. It was cruel cold. She called me a failure, said she'd been thinking of leaving for months and that she only stayed because I was the one paying the bills. That was the moment everything changed. But what she didn't know, what she never saw coming, was what was waiting in my inbox that morning, and it changed everything. If you've ever been kicked when you were already down, if you've ever had someone laugh at your pain, stick around. Because this story isn't about losing. It's about watching the wrong person reveal who they really are and showing them who you are without them. What would you do if your partner laughed at your downfall? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to Revenge with Chris for more true stories where karma always finds its way. For most of my life, I believed loyalty was everything. I wasn't the smartest guy in the room, but I worked hard. I showed up early, stayed late, and never complained. For 12 years, I poured everything I had into my job as a marketing executive at a mid-sized firm in Denver. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid well, offered stability, and gave me a sense of purpose. And then there was Amanda. We met at a friend's barbecue 9 years ago. She was vibrant, funny, and had this energy that made you feel like the center of her world, at least in the beginning. We got married after a year of dating. People said we were moving too fast, but I thought I'd found my partner for life. Looking back, I see all the little signs I ignored, the way she lit up when I talked about promotions, how she always seemed more affectionate when bonuses hit my account. But love makes you blind, or maybe I just wanted to believe she loved me, not the paycheck. Our life together was comfortable. Nice house, 2 cars, vacations once a year. Amanda didn't work. She said she wanted to focus on finding herself and maybe start a business one day. I supported that. I wanted to be the husband who provided, who made her dreams possible. So when the company announced a corporate merger, I wasn't worried at first. I had seniority, a track record of success. I was loyal. Turns out loyalty doesn't mean much when the new executives want to cut costs. I was called into a conference room on a Friday morning. The HR manager slid an envelope across the table with a rehearsed apology. 12 years gone in under 5 minutes. A modest severance package and a pat on the back. I remember sitting in my car afterward, staring at the steering wheel, feeling empty, not angry, not even sad yet, just hollow. But through that fog, one thought kept me grounded. Amanda, I told myself she'd understand, that we'd get through it together, that this was just a setback and she'd remind me I was more than a job title. I drove home replaying speeches in my head, how I'd explain the situation, how we'd budget, how I'd find something new. I even imagined her pulling me into a hug, telling me we'd be fine. But when I walked through that door, reality hit harder than losing my job ever could. There was no concern in her eyes, no questions about how I was feeling. Just that smirk and a comment that shattered whatever illusions I had left. "Guess I should have listened to my sister," she said, swirling her wine. "She always said you were too safe, too boring." I stood there clutching that envelope, my heart pounding for all the wrong reasons. I tried to speak to reason with her, but she cut me off. "I'm not sticking around to watch you spiral," she added. "You've got 2 weeks to figure it out. Eric, get a job or I'm gone." 2 weeks. 9 years of marriage reduced to an ultimatum over a bad day at work. That night I sat alone in the living room staring at the ceiling while Amanda laughed on the phone with her friends in the other room, probably telling them how pathetic I looked. I didn't sleep. Not because I was worried about my career, but because I realized I'd been living with a stranger who didn't love me, only what I could provide. But here's the thing Amanda didn't know. Before that HR meeting, I'd received an email, an offer from a competing firm in San Francisco, double my salary, stock options, the works. The CEO had been courting me for months, but I stayed loyal to my company. The merger changed that I hadn't responded yet, but as I listened to Amanda's laughter echo through the house that night, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I wasn't just going to accept the offer. I was going to let Amanda show me exactly who she was before I walked away for good. The next morning, Amanda was already up dressed like she was heading to brunch with friends, which of course she was. She barely glanced at me as I sat at the kitchen table sipping black coffee, my mind racing with everything that had unraveled in less than 24 hours. Before she walked out the door, she tossed a comment over her shoulder like it was nothing. Don't just sit there all day, start applying. I'm not supporting a deadbeat. The door slammed before I could respond. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. I opened my laptop not to search for jobs, but to pull up that email again. The offer was still there waiting. I drafted my acceptance, but didn't hit send. Not yet. I needed to know just how deep Amanda's betrayal ran. Over the next few days, I pretended to be the broken man she expected. I stayed home, avoided shaving, left a few dishes in the sink, just enough to sell the image of a husband spiraling, and Amanda. She thrived in it. She started inviting her friends over more often. Friends who used to greet me with politeness, now whispered and giggled when they saw me. One afternoon, I overheard her in the living room loud enough for me to catch every word. I told you, he's useless now. Amanda laughed. 12 years and he has nothing to show for it. I'm already packing some stuff. Probably move in with my sister until I figure things out. Her friend asked something I couldn't hear, but Amanda's answer made my stomach turn. Please, if he thinks I'm sticking around for love, he's dumber than I thought. That was day 5. By day 7, I noticed boxes appearing in the guest room, clothes missing from the closet. Amanda didn't bother hiding it anymore. Every conversation was a jab, comments about how real men bounce back faster, how maybe I should swallow my pride and take a retail job. I kept my composure. Every cruel word, every dismissive glance, I documented it all. Voice memos on my phone, screenshots of her texts where she mocked me or threatened to leave. Then came day 10, the day everything clicked into place. Amanda was in the shower when her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Normally, I wouldn't snoop. But after everything, curiosity wasn't just justified, it was survival. I glanced at the screen. A message from a contact saved as Jim. But the preview wasn't about workout schedules. Can't wait to see you tonight. Same hotel. My chest tightened, not from heartbreak, but from confirmation. While I was pretending to be unemployed, Amanda wasn't just planning her exit, she was already moving on, or maybe she never stopped. I scrolled through the thread, weeks worth of messages, photos, hotel bookings. It wasn't just an affair, it was a full-blown relationship, and suddenly her urgency to leave made perfect sense. She wasn't waiting for me to get a job. She was waiting to secure enough leverage to bleed me dry in a divorce. But she miscalculated one thing. I wasn't the desperate man she thought I was. That evening, when Amanda returned from running errands, she barely acknowledged me. She walked past, phone glued to her hand, probably texting her trainer. I looked at her not with anger, but with a calm I didn't know I had. Let her keep playing her game. I finalized my acceptance email that night, negotiating a higher signing bonus. Just because I could, I scheduled the start date for 2 weeks out, giving myself enough time to prepare for the next phase, one Amanda would never see coming. By day 14, Amanda packed the last of her essentials. I'm staying at my sister's for a while, she announced casually, like we were discussing dinner plans. I'll come back once you sort yourself out, or maybe not. We'll see. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. As she walked out, I knew this was no longer about saving a marriage. It was about protecting myself from a woman who had been wearing a mask for years. But I wasn't done yet. Before Amanda could file for divorce and make a claim on my future income, I had one more move to make. And when I played my hand, she'd realized too late that she was never holding the winning cards. The house was quiet after Amanda left. For the first time in weeks, I could actually hear myself think. No sarcastic comments, no forced laughter echoing from phone calls with her friends. Just silence. I stood in the doorway, staring at the empty space where her shoes used to be, where her perfume lingered faintly in the air. It should have hurt more, but it didn't. Because this wasn't the woman I married, not anymore. Maybe not ever. I walked upstairs, opened the guest room, and looked at the few boxes she hadn't bothered to take. Old memories, wedding photos, Cards we once wrote each other, all left behind, like they meant nothing. That was my point of no return. I wasn't going to be the man waiting by the door, hoping she'd come back. I wasn't going to beg for a second chance from someone who had already replaced me. Instead, I opened my laptop and contacted my lawyer. I explained everything: my recent job loss, Amanda's behavior, the emotional abuse, and most importantly, the evidence of her affair. I forwarded screenshots, audio recordings, and even copies of her hotel reservations I'd pulled from her email when she carelessly left it open. My lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Karen, didn't mince words. "Eric, you're in a better position than you think. But we need to move fast before she smells the money." That afternoon, we drafted divorce papers on my terms. Since Amanda had no job, no contributions to our assets, and clear evidence of infidelity and emotional misconduct, Karen was confident we could protect everything I was about to build. But timing was everything. I still hadn't told Amanda about my new job. She thought I was unemployed, vulnerable, ripe for manipulation. I planned to keep it that way until every document was ready to be served. Over the next few days, Amanda's texts trickled in, not out of concern but control. "Have you applied anywhere yet? You better not be wasting time. I'm not coming back to a loser." I didn't respond. On day 4, her tone shifted. "We need to talk about splitting things up just in case. My sister says I should get a lawyer. Also, I want the car." I almost laughed. The same car I bought outright 2 years ago. She hadn't made a single payment on it. By day 6, Karen had everything finalized. All that was left was the right moment. It came sooner than I expected. Amanda showed up unannounced that evening, letting herself in with her spare key. I found her in the living room, casually browsing through the mail like she still lived there. When she saw me, she didn't even bother with pleasantries. "We need to discuss the house," she said, arms crossed. "I'm thinking I'll keep it. You can figure out some cheap apartment once you get back on your feet." I stared at her, this woman who once promised to stand by me, for better or worse. I smiled. "Amanda, you're right. We do need to talk." I walked over to the counter, picked up the envelope Karen had prepared, and handed it to her. "What's this?" she asked, frowning. "Divorce papers," I said calmly. "Already signed on my end." Her face shifted from smug superiority to confusion, then to panic. You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm very serious. And just so you know, I start my new job next week in San Francisco." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I continued, my voice steady. "Double my old salary, equity, relocation package. I've been finalizing it while you were busy, entertaining your trainer." The color drained from her face. "And before you get any ideas," I added, "my lawyer has copies of every message, every recording. You're not getting the house or the car, or a dime from my future earnings." Amanda's bravado crumbled in seconds. She tried to backtrack, tried to play the role of the misunderstood wife. "Eric, wait, I didn't mean, look, we can work through this. I was just stressed. I didn't know how to handle things." I shook my head. "You handled things exactly how you wanted to. And now so am I." She stood there speechless, holding the envelope like it weighed 100 pounds. For the first time in weeks, I felt light. There was no going back, not for her, and definitely not for me. In less than a week, I'd be on a plane to a new city, a new life, and Amanda. She was left standing in the ruins of the game. She thought she'd already won. Amanda didn't leave right away. After I handed her the divorce papers, she stood frozen, cycling through every tactic she could think of. First came denial, then anger, and finally desperation. "Eric, come on. You're really going to throw away 9 years over a few stupid mistakes?" She pleaded, her voice softening into the tone she used to get her way. I'd heard that voice before when she wanted a new handbag, a weekend getaway, or to smooth over one of her tantrums. But this time it didn't work. "I'm not throwing anything away," I said, calm and collected. "You did that the moment you laughed at me and started booking hotel rooms behind my back." She tried to argue, but I held up a hand. "There's nothing left to discuss. My lawyer will handle everything. You'll get what's fair, which, considering your behavior, is more than generous." Amanda's eyes darted around the room like she was searching for a lifeline. When she realized none were coming, she stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the picture frames. But I wasn't rattled. The next morning, I changed the locks and had the security system updated. Amanda's key was useless. Now I spent the following days wrapping up loose ends. My resignation letter for Denver was easy. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. My new company had already arranged my relocation package. A furnished apartment in San Francisco was waiting along with a signing bonus that made the sting of the layoff feel like a distant memory. But before I left, I made sure Amanda couldn't cause any more damage. Karen filed the divorce papers, officially attaching every piece of evidence we'd gathered. In our state, adultery and emotional abuse carried weight, especially when paired with Amanda's lack of employment and contribution to our shared assets. She tried to fight it, of course. Her lawyer sent over a list of demands, half the house value alimony, even a claim on my future bonuses. It was laughable. Karen responded with a single packet of documentation, photos, text voice recordings, proof of her affair, proof of her degrading comments while I was supposedly at my lowest. Within 48 hours, Amanda's tone changed. Her lawyer suggested a swift settlement to avoid public embarrassment in a courtroom disaster. In the end, Amanda walked away with exactly what she brought into the marriage. Nothing. No house, no car, no share of my new income. I allowed her to keep some personal belongings and a small cash settlement just to expedite the process. Not out of kindness but efficiency, I wanted her out of my life as quickly as possible. On my last day in Denver, Amanda showed up uninvited again. This time she wasn't angry. She was playing a different card. She stood at my doorstep dressed in the same outfit she wore on our first date. Hair done, makeup flawless, a forced smile on her face. "Eric, can we talk?" I leaned against the doorframe, unimpressed. "I don't think there's anything left to say." She stepped closer, lowering her voice to that familiar, sugary tone. "Look, I messed up. I got scared when you lost your job. I didn't know how to handle it. But we've built so much together. We can start over in San Francisco. I can change." I almost admired the performance, but I'd already seen the truth, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. I reached into my pocket and handed her a plain white envelope. "What's this?" she asked, hope flickering in her eyes. "My forwarding address for legal purposes and a reminder that the next time you show up uninvited, it'll be considered trespassing." Her face fell. The mask slipped for the last time. "You'll regret this," she hissed, venom replacing sweetness in an instant. I smiled. "No, Amanda. I regret not seeing through you sooner." With that, I closed the door, both literally and figuratively. The next morning, I boarded a flight to San Francisco. As the plane took off, I looked out the window feeling lighter than I had in years. This wasn't just a career move, it was a clean slate. Amanda was officially part of my past, and I had no intention of ever looking back. San Francisco was everything Denver wasn't: fresh air, new faces, a city where no one knew my story or cared. I wasn't Eric Peterson, the man with a crumbling marriage. I was Eric Peterson, the executive with a bright future. The first weeks flew by, immersed in work, meeting my new team, settling into my apartment overlooking the bay. For the first time in years, I felt free. But freedom has a way of attracting shadows from the past. It didn't take long before Amanda tried to claw her way back in. It started with emails, long emotional essays about how she'd reflected and realized what she lost, how she missed me, how she wanted to fix things. I ignored them. Then came the calls. Unknown numbers, voicemails filled with fake tears and empty promises. When that didn't work, she resorted to what Amanda did best: manipulation. I got a message from Karen one afternoon. "She's threatening to go public," Karen said bluntly. "Claims she'll tell everyone you abandoned her, left her penniless after years of supporting your career." I almost laughed. "She really thinks anyone would believe that," Karen chuckled. "Doesn't matter if they believe it, it's noise. But don't worry, we've got enough on record to shut that down before it starts." True to her word, Karen sent Amanda's lawyer a polite reminder of the non-disclosure agreement Amanda had signed as part of the settlement, an agreement that barred her from discussing our marriage, the divorce, or anything related to my career. Amanda went silent after that, at least for a while. Weeks later, I was grabbing coffee near the office when my phone buzzed with a message from an old mutual friend. "Hey man, just heard about Amanda. You okay?" I frowned, confused. "What about Amanda?" The reply came with a screenshot, a social media post, Amanda looking far less polished than usual, ranting about men who throw away loyal wives for younger women and corporate greed ruining lives. It was pathetic and vague enough to avoid legal trouble, but anyone who knew us could read between the lines. I didn't respond. I didn't need to, because life was already serving Amanda the karma she thought she could outrun. A few days later, I heard through the grapevine that her relationship with the gym trainer had fallen apart. Apparently, he wasn't interested in being a full-time replacement once Amanda realized she couldn't fund her lifestyle anymore. She moved back in with her sister, jobless reputation in tatters, and no safety net to fall back on. Meanwhile, my career took off. The company loved my work. I was promoted within 6 months, my name gaining recognition across the industry. Invitations to conferences, networking events, even mentoring opportunities. It was during one of those mentorship sessions, sitting across from a young professional who'd just been laid off, that I realized something. Losing my job was the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because of the money, not because of the title, but because it exposed the truth. I'd been too blind or too comfortable to see Amanda wasn't my partner. She was an anchor dragging me down while I thought I was building us both up. And when the storm hit, she didn't just let go. She laughed while I sank, but I didn't sink, I swam harder. One evening, months after the dust had settled, I received one final email from Amanda. I heard about your promotion. I just wanted to say I'm proud of you. Maybe one day we can grab coffee and catch up. No hard feelings. I stared at the message, a faint smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. There was a time when a part of me might have wanted closure, might have been tempted to respond, but now I deleted the email without a second thought. Amanda was nothing more than a chapter I'd finished reading, a cautionary tale buried in the past. As I looked out at the San Francisco skyline from my apartment window, I realized the true climax of my story wasn't confronting Amanda. It was realizing I didn't need to. Walking away on my own terms, that was the real victory. And as for Amanda, she could keep chasing shadows. I had a life to live. It's strange how life has a way of revealing people's true nature. Not when things are good, but when everything falls apart. I used to think strength was measured by how much you could provide. The long hours, the steady paycheck, the ability to keep a roof over our heads. That's what I believed made me a good husband, a good man. But losing my job taught me something I never expected. It wasn't the loss of income that hurt the most. It was realizing that the person I shared my life with only saw me as valuable when I was useful to her. The moment I stumbled, she didn't offer a hand. She pushed me further down. Looking back now, I'm grateful. Grateful for the layoff. Grateful for the mask Amanda finally dropped. Because without that painful clarity, I might still be trapped in a life built on illusions. Today, my success isn't defined by my job title or salary. It's defined by knowing who I am without needing validation from anyone else. I've learned to surround myself with people who value character over convenience. I mentor young professionals not just on career strategy, but on resilience. How to recognize the difference between partners who stand with you and those who stand on you. As for Amanda, I don't hate her. I don't need to. Life has a way of handling people like her. She wanted a man who could provide endlessly without ever needing support in return. What she didn't realize was that real partnerships aren't transactional. They're built on mutual respect, trust, and standing together when the ground shakes. So if there's one thing I'd tell anyone listening, it's this. Sometimes the worst day of your life is actually the beginning of your freedom. Pay attention to who claps when you're winning and who disappears when you fall. Because losing a job, a relationship, or even your sense of security isn't the end. It's a test. And if you pass it, you'll come out stronger, smarter, and surrounded by the right people. I walked away from Amanda with nothing but my integrity, and that turned out to be worth more than anything she could have taken from me. So ask yourself, when everything falls apart, who's still standing beside you? If the answer shocks you, good, it means you're finally seeing clearly.